to another week of CybHER Conversations. We are so glad that you all could join us today in another week of introducing you to an amazing woman in cybersecurity. So before I introduce her, I do want to introduce myself. I'm Katie Shuck and part of the CybHER leadership team, along with Kamthi Narukonda, who will be facilitating our Q&A that we have later today. We also have with us the co-founders of CybHER, Drs. Ashley Podorotsky and Pam Rowland, who are both professors up at Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota, where CybHER is. So you can always check us out on our website at www.cybher.org, but our mission is to motivate, empower, and educate girls in cybersecurity. So that is why we have these programs for you. Today, we are so excited to feature Dr. Siobahn Grady, who is an assistant professor of information science and systems at North Carolina Central University. Dr. Grady is also a machine learning expert. She has done so much work in the field, and she is also a very passionate cybersecurity professional. So we are thrilled to have her on here. You'll also want to ask her about her passion with art too, because she is an entrepreneur working to engage in art as well. So it'll be thrilling things to find for those artists who are online with us today too. But without further, or actually before I hand it over to her, I do want to remind you to ask your questions via the Q&A. You can ask them at any point, and then Kamthi will be facilitating that Q&A later on. So ask those in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And Dr. Grady, we're going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I just want to just thank you one last time for bringing me to the session today. Ladies, I'm so happy to be here because when I was your age, there weren't many opportunities like this. And I'm hoping that I can share some special gems with you today, not only about my journey to how I arrived at where I am, but just some steps, or what I like to call a recipe, or what we call in computer science, an algorithm that you might potentially be able to follow so that you can arrive at whatever destination you choose. So let's start way back into time, a little bit about who I am as a person. So I'm from a very small town in North Carolina. Not sure if you all heard of North Carolina, but I'm from a small town called Hillsborough. And so with that, I grew up in a home as an only child. My dad is a mathematician, and my mom actually worked at IBM, which way back in the day, that was a thing because computers were very expensive. And so having those two people, my parents in the home, actually provided an opportunity for me to always have technology readily available. And also being an only child, I had lots of time by myself. And so how I got to computers is through video games. So I played the video games very tirelessly. And if you're a gamer out there, know I feel your passion there. And so I had many first cousins that I would play video games with and challenge them. And lots of them happened to be boys. And I used to win all the games. I beat everybody. That was my favorite thing to do. So from there, the love of video games then turned toward computers. Once we got a computer in the home, computer games became a thing. So I took that video game console and then moved it on to the computer. Once I got on the computer, I found myself doing many things that I thought other people were doing, but they weren't. That's something called the DOS command prompt. I would travel in many directories to get the things that I needed. They had something called a floppy disk as well. I know you don't know about any of these things because we have the cloud now, but that's how it all started. And from there, I also participated in some activities at school. So I'm not sure what activities you have at your school, but they had a program called the Minority Science and Outreach Program. And so being in those programs, being a girl of color, a woman of color now, I would participate in activities that had opportunities for minorities to get more involved in science and math. And I loved every moment of it. Math for me was logical. It made sense. I was able to check my answers when I was in class and also with my homework. And I fell in love with it. But part of that could also be because of my dad. because he was a mathematician. So that part might run a little bit in the family. But science and math always stuck with me. With science, they teach you the scientific method and all of the things. And I was just fascinated because I'm a person that likes to ask a lot of questions. And so I just want to say, if you're one of those people that is very curious and inquisitive, then you might find yourself being a STEM lover as well. Someone who wants to stay in STEM or computer science, information science, or any of the engineering fields. If you have questions and also you like to work on solving them, that's all the engineering and all these fields are. We are problem solvers. We like to ask questions and then figure out the answers to them. But back to the beginning, as I stated to you, the love of video games and then turning it into computers. So once I started playing games on the computers, something called the internet came around. And I know I still look pretty young, but I'm a little up there. But once the internet came around, I got involved with making websites. And so by this time, I'm probably around in middle school going to high school. And I'm not sure what age group you are, but maybe some of this is sounding similar to you. So when the internet came around, I started to make websites and I self-taught myself how to do it. And then that became my passion. So it started off with video games, but then I transferred that knowledge to then building websites. And so that is when I started to realize I really like computers. I would spend hours upon hours on the computer all night, all day. And some of it may have had to do with me being an only child, but maybe that's you. Maybe you're on your smartphone or on your computer all day, all night as well. And maybe that's telling you that you might have a passion for computers. Now let's fast forward. Once I get through high school, I decided I want to go to college. And for me, it was crystal clear that I wanted to major in computer science. But I went through some steps to get to that point, process of elimination. I decided what things I didn't like, and I knew I didn't want to be in the medical field because I don't really like the sight of blood and, touching people and things like that. So, I went through that process of elimination, and you probably will have to go through that too to decide what your passions are. But the fact, again, that you're here, you're hearing from many different women who are able to share with you how they got to where they are too. So when I got to college, I majored in computer science, did well, I graduated. But then when I graduated and I started working, I realized that there was another passion that I hadn't considered that I really liked, and that was people. And so that's when I decided that I wanted to go back to school and I wanted to merge both my passion for technology and people and bring them together. And so with that, I was able to go back to school, get my master's degree. I got my master's degree at the same place I work now in the same department. And I did that within a year's time. And so I know that some of you might not know that, but most master's degrees are 2 years. I got my master's degree in 1 year and I work full time. And that was very challenging. That was probably the toughest thing I had done at that time. But then after I did that, I was able to advance in my career, get promotions, and we all like a little bit of extra money. And I was able to do just that. But something still didn't sit right with me. I wanted more. And then I realized that I really, really like to help people just as much as I love technology. And so that's when I went on to get my PhD from North Carolina A&T State University. And I did that because I like working with students. I like helping people develop their potential as a computer scientist, as an information scientist, or whatever it is they want to be. And while I was at North Carolina A&T, I did an amazing thing. I became the first woman to get a PhD in computer science from my university. But I didn't know that at the time. I just was focused on my passions and where I wanted to go. And so you've already heard from Katie that now I'm a professor and I'm doing the exact thing that I love. So I left a whole lot of things out of that whole situation or my journey, but I want to share with you a few things that will happen as you continue on your journey. The first thing is you will always encounter some challenges. Every step of the way in my journey, from the video games with my cousins, because they were mostly all boys at that time that were around my same age, that was a challenge. Because, you know, sometimes people tell people or boys that they can be better than girls. And for me to be the girl beating the guys, I had to learn some lessons, and it was challenging, but I got through that. And you'll get through whatever your challenges are. When I got to college, you know, I was with computer science, there's not many girls. And so I got through that too, because you learn how to work with other people and you help them see the value in what you bring to the table. Okay. And I did that at my undergraduate, I did that at my master's, and I did that with my PhD. And that might be something you encounter too. And of course, the classes can be challenging. Boy, do we know. I'm sure you have figured out by now during COVID that, you know, being online might not be as fun as you might have thought it would be, right? You miss that in-person interaction. And so those are challenges that you have to get through and that we're all getting through too. And so what I'm trying to say is, with this step-by-step journey, this algorithm that I'm giving to you, I just want to go through and give you some steps that you can do to decide on where you want to be as well. So the first thing that you need to do is, you know, deciding what it is that you want to do. Now, if you don't have someone in the house, like how I had my parents working in the field, that's okay. Finding workshops like this or talking to your teachers, that can help you narrow down what it is that you're passionate about so that you can know where you want to go. From there, you have to do something like preparing yourself. So even though I know I wanted to major in computer science, there's specific skill sets that you have to have with computer science in order to achieve certain jobs. And so some of that might be programming in Python or learning SQL. You still need those interpersonal skills, but you need to determine whatever those skills are that you need in order to get that position, job, or next thing that you want to do. After that, then you need to follow the recipe, follow those steps. So for instance, we know that sometimes obtaining a degree will take you to the next point, but you need to make sure that for whatever position you're looking for, that you have all of the necessary skill sets, and you have, whether that be a degree or certain skills, that you have those, so then when you apply for that position, you're ready. And I'm not sure of the age groups, but this doesn't just apply for a job. This can apply for if you're in high school and you want to go to college, or if there's some type of scholarship or program you want to get accepted into, right? Make sure that you have all the things that you need so that you can be successful upon applying for that. And those will be the things to get you where you want to be. And that's the whole thing about it, right? We know we want money, we know we want all the things, but we just have to make sure that we're prepared so that when we get there, we're ready. And so I hope just a little bit about my journey has helped you a little bit, but I want to share some other things with you that I've been able to do while I was on my journey and that I'm still doing. And so now I'm going to share my screen with you to just show you some of the work that I'm doing right now. One moment. All right. So the first thing that I want to share with you, this is my website. I'm hoping that some of you, if you want to connect with me, that you will, and you can continue to learn more about me. And so I have this there because one of the things that I'm very, very proud about is that I'm a national role model for STEM, along with others who might be here on this call today. And what we do is something like what I'm doing right now. We host workshops or activities that you can learn from in regards to what it is we do. So I had a cool thing happen about a week or so ago. I did a workshop on computational thinking, and that is to learn how to build a board game by using those techniques. And so that's something that if you come to my website, you can learn more about. Also, I left one part out too about when I was in school. I was able to have everything paid for, and that is a blessing. So when I was at North Carolina A&T working on my PhD, they paid for me to get that degree. And guess what I'm doing? I'm now paying students as well. So they don't even have to worry about their education. So I'm paying it forward. And that's one thing that you should think about doing if you get the opportunity. And one of the ways that I'm doing that is through my research group. So as a professor, there are 3 things that I'm evaluating on. That is research, teaching, and service. And so I definitely teach, and I have several classes that I teach. One of them is artificial intelligence. And so hopefully you've heard of AI. If not, it's almost everywhere. So if you have one of those Alexis or, hey, Google, say hello.
Hey, how are you?
That's some AI technology. It's learning how to recognize your voice, your patterns. And if you have those technologies in your home, a lot of times you'll see them listening. You'll see it light up. And if you ask it what it's doing, it's telling you it's learning. And that's what AI does. And so let me talk to you a little bit about this. So this is my research group that I have at North Carolina Central. It's called the Lair, pronounced layer, almost like a dragon's lair. Because our research group, this is our secret place. This is where we come to do cool things that we find fun and interesting and work on them together. And so these are some of the projects we're working on. And then here, I want you to see the team. Some of the students that I'm working with, I'm paying for. So I'm paying it forward. Their education is paid for. And I'm also working with some high school students here. And I'm saying that to you because there may be an opportunity for you to get a research experience, even as a high schooler. Right now, you can contact someone at a local university to see if they will be willing to allow you to come and work with their research lab. And that's how you get experience early. And I wanted to share another project I'm working on with you all. So Ashley, who's on the line as well, both of us are national ambassadors for STEM. And one thing that we do as professors is we write grants. And so I had the opportunity to write a grant. So I know you all have heard of DIY. Well, I came up with something called SIY, STEM it yourself. I'm so passionate about young people learning some of these tools and about science, technology, engineering, and math at an early age, because remember, I was only able to do some of these things when I got to high school. But if you can do them while you're in middle school or earlier, that's even better. And so for this grant, I'm working with some students. Sorry.
Try again in a few seconds.
But I'm working with some students who are in middle school, and with this grant, they will be able to get STEM programming. And this is so important because I'm a person of color, and so some of these young ladies that I work with, they are women or girls of color as well, but they're in a very rural area, and so they don't have access to a lot of the STEM programming. So I'm working with a community organization to help provide some of that STEM programming to the girls, and these will be some of the speakers. And these speakers are all national ambassadors for STEM, just like I am. And so this matters because representation matters. Seeing someone that looks like you in the area you want to be is very necessary. Sometimes we don't even know if we can do these things unless we see someone that we know or feel comfortable with. And so I'm really excited about that work. I'm also doing another cool research project. Has anybody heard of a self-driving car? So hopefully you've heard of that. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing research on self-driving cars to determine fault detection in real time. And that's important because I'm going to take all those machine learning skills that was mentioning earlier, and I'm going to apply it to see if I can determine when faults are happening, and if some, you know how sometimes faults happen, but it's not a real fault. I want to be able to determine if the fault is real, if it's happening, and how we can prevent it so that we can save lives, because the future is already here, ladies. or gentlemen or both, the future is here. Self-driving cars are what we'll have in the future. And so these are just some of the research projects I'm working on. But I just want to say that in merging both the people and the technology, I was able to do that by using my recipe to get towards being a professor. There's no better thing that I can think of than to pay it forward, work with other people, young people, or older, because students can be of any age, work with whomever has that passion and courage to want to move forward, but they don't know the steps. And so I couldn't ask for a better occupation to have. I love what I do. I love writing grants. I love working with all of you. And I hope that I shared something today that may have inspired you or you learned something. And I hope that when you leave today, that you will find out what your algorithm is for success, what that looks like for you. Map out that recipe and follow it. That is the key. So I think that's all for now. I'm going to pass it off now for questions.
Thank you. That was inspiring. You have an algorithm for success. I love it. I absolutely love it. So I have to say, it's very inspiring to know that you were the first woman to receive a PhD at that university. And that is amazing.
Thank you.
That is amazing. So we have quite a few questions from our audience. So you said you loved to play video games when you were a kid. This was one of my questions too. What was your favorite game?
And I know this is going to sound probably cliche, but it was the Mario Brothers. I was always trying to beat King Koopa and Bowser and knock them down to save the Toad Princess. That was one of my favorite things. And then when Yoshi came around, I love Yoshi. I was riding him everywhere to get.
Mine too.
So
I used to play Mario with my brother and my cousin. They were both younger than me, so I obviously would be able to beat them. So I loved playing Mario.
Yes, that was my favorite one. Mario. I also was very good at Sonic the Hedgehog. What else? I had so many games. Mortal Kombat. That was the other one. I love Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. I don't know how I almost forgot that. Sorry. Those were my favorites.
They're awesome games. So you've had quite the journey to get to where you are now. So what was the hardest thing that you've had to overcome to get to here?
That's a great question. I think I would say the PhD was the hardest. And I think it's because it's very ambiguous. You know that you have some things that you have to do to arrive to your destination. But there are points in the journey where it feels like that you may never get there. And I think just sticking with something, even though you can't see the finish line, has been one of the hardest things I've had to do. But for me personally, I have faith, and my faith and my spiritual, who I am in my faith, it grounded me to help me to continue to persevere. And I'm so glad that I did, because right when I was at my breaking point, saying, I don't think I can do this anymore, I had the right people at the right time saying, you can do this. And I did. And so I say all that to say that in life, there will be things that seem like you can't do it. It will feel like everything is against you. But if you stick with it, I'm just here to say you can and you will arrive on the other side. It's almost like that breaking point is the test. And so that's something I've had to learn. And by the way, it hasn't stopped after PhD. I still go through things almost all the time that I have to continue to push myself and remember, hey, this is only a little slight setback, keep pushing. And so it's a life thing, but I think my PhD taught me to appreciate the process. And so if you're a person that can get through the process, you can do anything.
I believe that. I'm in the PhD program myself, and I'm right at that point. Like,
You're
I'm at it.
Yeah, good. That means
I'm at the breaking point right now. So
that means you're on your way to your breakthrough. And I really do sincerely mean that. So I hope you're taking that, because that's what's coming.
Yeah, I have to believe that. I really do.
Yeah.
So, you said that you majored in computer science. So, were you the only girl in those classes, or did you have a better ratio, like 1:2, or?
So that's a great question. So do you mean PhD, or you mean to kind of talk about all the programs?
The question just asked about
Okay.
computer
Well,
science, but you can tell about anything.
So I didn't talk about it. I actually have 4 degrees, everyone. That's a lot. I have a bachelor's in computer science, 2 master's degrees, 1 in information science, 1 in computer science, and then a PhD in computer science. For most of those programs, I wouldn't say I was the only girl, but there may have been 1 other. The numbers were very small. It couldn't have been more than 3 girls in a class at a time. But that didn't bother me. And I'm starting to think that those video games with all my cousins kind of prepared me to be in this male-dominated space, because to be honest with you, for me, it never mattered, because I can kind of hold my own. But there were times where I did have to assert myself and for instance, let the gentleman know if there's a coding assignment or something like that, that I could do it, that they couldn't make me the secretary for the group. Not that there's anything wrong with being a secretary, but it's just a matter of people appreciating that you bring other skills to the table and not stereotyping you for your race or gender. And so those things were opportunities where I got to assert myself and also show some of the gentlemen that they didn't have me figured out.
I love that. You really do have to assert your own. I mean, you have to take a stand sometimes. There's no other way. Like,
that's right.
So about the PhD, how did you feel after you found out that you were the first woman to get the PhD from that university?
Oh my goodness. It was and is still a very surreal moment. I was not the first, woman or girl in the program. I'm the first one to finish. And so I think as I was going through the program, it never even crossed my mind. I was so focused on just graduating because I knew there was another girl there already. But when I found out that I actually had made it through, it was quite shocking. And it's something I'm very proud of because I worked really hard for it. And I don't think they've had a woman graduate from the program since then. I mean, it's only been 2 years, but no other woman has finished the program yet. And I'm hoping that someone else comes through and changes that. But somebody has to trailblaze the way. And now that it's done, someone else knows that it's possible. And that's all that needs to be there, is that it's possible. But yeah, it's pretty surreal, and it still is.
So, because of your computer science background, do you like programming? And if so, do you have a favorite coding language?
Yeah, I do. I love Python. And when I'm not doing that, I still love HTML. That's like the first thing, a programming language I learned to do websites. I still love HTML, still love doing websites. Katie mentioned that, the art part. So I do have a company called Dreams Creative Group that I started back in 2015, and it deals with web development and graphic design. And so I don't have time much these days for Dreams Creative Group because I'm so busy with the layer and NCCU and all the things, but I still love doing websites too, but Python.
I was going to ask you, this is from me, by the way.
Yeah.
So how did you come about developing the Dreams Creative Group? Like what I want to ask is, how did you switch into that?
I think, from what I was doing. So when I started Dreams Creative Group, I was a database developer. And that's another language I love. I love it, SQL too, or it's a query language. But I was doing the database work, and I just love websites. And I happened to be working with someone else at the company, and I thought we were going to start the company together, but they backed out on me, and I said, well, that's okay. I'm going to proceed on because I was really passionate about it, and I didn't want to do it full time, but like for a hobby. And I just made that move. And so being a business owner is a whole different skill set. And one thing that I don't think people know, but in North Carolina, at least, they have a small business, not bureau, it's I forget the exact name of it, but essentially like all the community colleges in North Carolina have small business workshops, or in my area, they have like a small business hub. So what I would do in my free time, I would go take those classes to learn how to develop a business proposal, to learn how to do all these other things so that I could start this company and learn how to submit for my LLC, my EIN number. And so that was, I'm a lifelong learner. So if you guys haven't noticed, I am not a nerd, but I'm an intellect. I love learning. And so I was happy to do all those things in my free time to learn more. And I'm glad that I did that, actually, because I learned how to do managing a business. And that's essentially what a PhD is, believe it or not. It is entrepreneurship. As a PhD, I don't sell my ideas, but I try to get them funded. So it kind of puts you in that same mindset, but it's a different process, but it's similar, has some similarities is what I want to say.
So do you have any advice then for anyone or someone who wants to start working with web design and graphic design, but they don't know where to begin?
Let's see, what would I say? I would say get started. Build your portfolio. So for instance, think about, so I think, and I haven't majored in business ever in life, but I'm pretty sure what they tell people who want to do those types of things is to do a market analysis, see what's going on within that market, see what the need is. And so, for instance, for someone who wants to do websites, think about what company or what person in your family or church or school who might need a website. And from there, reach out to them and try to scope, get a feel for what they need, what the needs are, that needs assessment, and then see if there'll be a person that will let you build a website for them to get your portfolio built up. That's what you need. All we need is that one person to believe in us, to give us a shot at doing something that we want to do, and then we have that outcome. And one cool thing about a website is it's almost like an online calling card. That's the first place people go to learn more about a company, you, or whoever, and build that for free, right? And I keep saying free because you have to start somewhere. Once you get everything down packed, then you can start saying, hey, I think this might be my fee for these services, but you have to start somewhere. And if somebody's willing to take a shot on you to get your portfolio built, I would say start there. But think about what the needs are. Who needs a website? Or maybe it's just you. But what kind of content do you want to put out there? And so I would say that as far as websites. Graphic design, the same thing. I know graphic design is kind of saturated now because we have things like Canva where everybody feels like they're a graphic designer. But that does not mean that you still can't put yourself out there. There may be people who don't know how to use Canva, and so you do the flyers for them or whatever. But you have to start somewhere. Just find out who needs your help, and you go from there.
So our last question to you is, what's the coolest thing that you've ever done?
Man, that's a great question. I don't think I've done the coolest thing I'm gonna do yet. Let me just say that. But for now, I would say everything I've done in this life has been amazing. I have had fun doing every single thing, even the challenging things. So I don't know that there's just one cool thing. I just think the life that I have lived thus far, I've been very blessed. And so I say stay tuned because I believe the best is yet to come. I really do.
I love that answer. The best is yet to come. Honestly, it really is. You never know.
Yeah.
We normally like to wrap up the Q&A with a question about any advice you have for the youth, but you've already provided us with the algorithm for success. So I'm going to turn this over to Katie. Thank you for answering all our questions.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I absolutely love it because I do think that the best is always yet to come in each of us. You never know what we're going to do. So it's just great words of advice for all of the young people watching. I did just launch our CybHER poll. So for all of the attendees, if you can fill that out, just to let us know a little bit more about you and the people who are watching with you. We would appreciate that. Also, you'll want to be sure that you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram so that you know about all of our upcoming programs. We do still have openings in our upcoming Gen Cyber CybHER camp. It was going virtual this year and will begin in November. So we are super excited about that, and you can find more information on how to register for this free virtual camp open to 6th to 9th grade girls on our website at www.cybher.org. Also, this recording, along with all of our CybHER conversations, can be found on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CybHER. So go there. This one will be posted by Friday. So you can share this with all of your friends and classmates. We are so glad that you all joined us today. We hope you will come back next week. We are actually featuring our very own Dr. Ashley Podoratsky, who is the Associate Dean of the Beacom College of Computer and Cyber Sciences at Dakota State University and one of CybHER's founders. So we are thrilled to have her. She's also a digital forensics expert. And you'll want, if you play anything with the Xbox, you'll want to know about her because she is an expert in Xbox forensics. So exciting stuff coming up. Please be sure to follow us. And thank you so much, Dr. Grady, for joining us today. And thank you to all of the participants who are here live with us and those watching the recording. Have a great day.